So if you haven't heard, there's a protest going on in New York called the Occupy Wall Street. Now, I don't agree with on most things, but I do agree with the right to protest. Though I think they are doing it in the wrong place though, because should be protesting in Congress or the White House, because they are the ones who facilitated the bailouts and all the other handouts to corporations that these guys are protesting. But there is one rhetoric that really gets on my nerves. It's greed, or more specifically, corporate greed. So let's look at the concept of greed. Dictionary defines it as an excessive desire to acquire or possess more than what one needs or deserves. And that is where the problem lies. Greed, by definition, is arbitrary. Who says who needs what? Telling someone else how much they should have requires that someone decide what someone else is entitled to. And that's not a power I'm willing to give up to anyone. See, you can't have it both ways. You can't have your cake and eat it too. If you want freedom, then you have to concede that people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, who have earned their money, have a right to keep it. So greed makes you rich, right? So if I make myself greedy, then I'll be rich, right? No. I could be the greediest man in the world, but it won't increase my assets by a single dime. For me to get rich, I will have to make something, a product that people want to buy, and then sell it at a reasonable price. And what drives this corporate greed? Do you walk into a store and look for the most expensive product or the cheapest? Most likely you strike a balance between cost and quality. Usually, you have all seen it. Usually there are lines that stretch around buildings, around the stores on Black Fridays. People camp outside, just save a few bucks on their favorite products. Now is that greed? Yeah, everyone wants lower prices, but where do they come from? You know, another one of those favorite lines of politicians, the punchlines or talking points, is jobs, or American jobs, or insert XYZ country over here. Yeah, everyone wants shit to be made in their own country, but when it's made, no one buys it. Why? Because it costs more. What's a corporation? Most of them are publicly traded, owned by millions of shareholders. So what drives corporate greed? It's when the shareholders want a higher return on the investment. It's when you call your portfolio manager and tell them to be more aggressive. It's when you want a higher return on a 401k. It's when you want cheaper insurance. Every time you want something cheaper, that drives corporate greed. I want a good house, car, TV, and all the consumer goods. Should I apologize for that? Feel guilty? And I'm entitled to them. Granted, I work for them. I am greedy. I have an immense greed for knowledge. Is that greed any different than greed for wealth? If it is, why? See, for me to actually read books, someone first had to write them. Is it any different than wealth? Someone to get rich, they have to produce a product that people want to buy. Both buyer and seller benefit. Greed for wealth is no different than greed for anything else. And since when did the rich become a source of envy? Most of the millionaires and billionaires are self-made. How did it go from aspiring to emulate the success to, hey, let's get the government to redistribute their wealth for us? See, I could have come here and took some moral high ground and said how altruistic someone or corporations are supposed to be. So what am I saying here? Am I promoting greed? No, not at all. Selflessness is a beautiful thing. It's a virtue. But you cannot force it on someone. It's not my place, or anyone else's for that matter, to tell anyone how generous they should be. You know what I think? Greed as an argument is for politicians who want to get a cheap applause from a gullible crowd, or for people who are too intellectually bankrupt without any of their arguments support their thesis.